Hi, my name's Sam Fisch, and you're listening to The Fish Bowl. Today's guest is Ezra Godden. Ezra is most known for his work with Stuart Gordon and his H.P. Lovecraft adaptations. Today we'll be talking a little bit about those films and some of Ezra's other work. Ezra Godden on The Fish Bowl, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Before we get started, there's one thing I just kind of have to get out of the way here,
Yep.
and that is the fact of your first name.
Yeah.
Your first name is so awesome that it actually happens to be my middle name.
Oh, that's why it's awesome.
Yes, yes.
Samuel or Sam?
Samuel Ezra Fisch is my full name.
Wow. Um, my middle name is my star sign, and I'll give you a hint. It's not Sagittarius.
I'm actually not too familiar with the astrology stuff.
It's Leo.
Leo. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's still a great.
Uh,
It's still a great middle name.
it's your one. Your one or mine? Both. Absolutely. Yeah. Ezra. Ezra's a name that becomes really great when you turn sort of 16, 17. Um, Up until then, you just kind of want to fit in. When you're a kid, everyone's like, what the hell is that? You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And you just want to be called John. And
I
also, when when you're at the sort of Starbucks or whatever, and you're ordering coffee, I find like 9 times out of 10 people are yelling out Israel, Israel, and so then I got into the habit again of calling myself John, just to make it real simple. And then of course you forget that you said John, and they're yelling out John for like half an hour, and you're like, who the fuck is this John guy? When am I going to get my coffee? Um,
exactly.
yeah, so that's the story of Ezra.
I'm the same way. When I was growing up, I was like, I always was kind of like not ashamed of my middle name, but it was kind of like that one name where it's like, just like you said, who the fuck wants to be, you know, known as Ezra? They want to be John or something else. But now that I'm in my adulthood, mid late 20s, and I'm going for screenwriting at Point Park University here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I think Ezra is just the coolest name, and I'm so proud to have it as my middle name. And in fact, the way I'm gonna have my writing name is going to be my full name, Samuel Ezra Fisch. And I just think
Nice.
Ezra is a great name. And you're absolutely right. It takes some time to get
To
into.
become cool. Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to. It's an age thing. Once you hit like 16, 17, then it's cool to have a weird, unusual name, and everyone's wants to know all about it. But before that, I just you just didn't want the extra attention. It was the wrong kind of attention.
exactly. But
But yeah, now man, we got the cool name. So what are you gonna do?
exactly. The cool kids on the block.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so fire away.
All right. Well, let's start with your Lovecraft adaptations. Your work with
I just did a new one. This could be a scoop for you
oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm
because it hasn't
always
come out. It hasn't come out yet, and also it's a new format for us. It's a podcast.
oh,
It's
awesome.
I'm gonna use this opportunity to plug this up front. It's with Stuart Gordon. Called me a few months ago, and he said they're doing this podcast series called Tales from Beyond the Pale, and it's a horror series. I believe that the general format is that each story is like a half hour sort of pilot length,
Right.
horror story. And he called me up and he said, "Look, I'd love you to do this. It's a three-hander, but it's mostly sort of you and this other guy, and it's set in. It's called it's H.P. Lovecraft. It's a short story called The Hound. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and he said Dennis Paoli, who wrote Dagon, has written this great script with Stuart. And I read it, and I actually think it's the best. It's definitely one of the best adaptations of Lovecraft that I've read, and I was really excited about it. And then, so I said, I'm in. It's actually, and the characters are all English, which was a bonus for me because I've played Americans in Lovecraft up until now. So that was a new twist on it for us. And then anyway, so then a couple of like a week passed, and he called me and he said Elijah Wood really wants to do the other part. And I was like, well, that's awesome. And then, to cut a long story short, over the next like month or two, the schedules wouldn't match up, and it just looked more and more like it wasn't going to happen that way. Obviously, I'm sure Elijah Wood's a very busy actor, as you know. I like to think I am, but anyway, it didn't work out. And then something great happened anyway, which was he got Chris McKenna to do it, who's a good friend of mine, and I don't know if you know, was in a Stuart Gordon movie called The King of the Ants.
Yes, that's a great movie.
Yeah, and he was also in Katherine Heigl's NBC show State of Affairs recently. I think it was NBC, something like that. But anyway, so he got Chris on board, and that's great because Chris and I he's been wanting to get us together for a while, and then even better, he got Barbara Crampton to play
Wow.
the other part, the other role. So we had a really fun time doing that. What's it been? A couple of months ago now, yeah, I just heard a rough cut. It's sounding really, really funny. It's very camp in a sort of, in a good way, in a Hammer horror sort of Christopher Lee type way.
Right, right.
But anyway, there's your scoop. I think it's coming out in around Halloween,
Fantastic.
which makes sense.
Right.
So yeah, look out for that.
Absolutely. I Lovecraft is probably my top favorite author of all time. I'm actually taking a writing for the adaptation class this semester, my senior year, and one of the stories I'm going to adapt is The Terrible Old Man, Lovecraft.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Stuart Gordon, Brian Usna, the whole team, Dennis Pauli.
Yeah, Dennis Paoli.
Yeah, they're, in my opinion, they're the greatest team to ever adapt Lovecraft's work. I grew up on Reanimator and From Beyond, and every Lovecraft movie my dad showed me, and I've since gone beyond what he's seen, and I have every Lovecraft short story, books, movies, all in my collection, and it's just been a major, major influence on my own writing and what I want to kind of adapt and take into the industry, if you will.
Excellent. What's your favorite screen adaptation? Reanimator?
Reanimator is definitely one of them. I really like, what is it? The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. I believe the film is called The Resurrected. It's with Chris Sarandon.
Oh, it was retitled The Resurrected?
Yeah, but it's based on the
Cool.
Lovecraft story, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. And
Gotcha. No, I haven't seen that one.
it's a little more low key one. It's actually directed by Dan O'Bannon, and written screenplays for Alien and Total Recall, Screamers, a lot of he's done a lot of adaptations himself.
Does he work? He works with Walter Hill sometimes, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I'm a huge Walter Hill fan. That's how I know that.
Yeah, I really like Walter Hill as well. Um, just all Lovecraft movies to me are great. I also like the Necronomicon Book of the Dead, which is like the anthology Lovecraft movie they
Right.
did.
Hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen that one either. You're definitely more up on your Lovecraft than I am. Even
There,
even even though I've been, with with the insiders, so to speak. Have
right,
you met
right.
Stuart?
I've always wanted to. I've had a chance to meet Jeffrey Combs once, um, but I've always Stuart and Brian and Dennis have been on my list to meet for a very long time, and I've actually wanted to get all three of them on the show. I just not sure how to go about that.
Yeah, the logistics, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah. Well, we live in hope. Maybe one day.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Well, we can also talk a little bit about some of the shorts you've done, like the package, and the one I really like a lot is Future Self.
Did I send that to you? How did you see that?
I'll be honest. I've before I kind of like message people. I look them up on IMDb if I'm not already a fan of theirs, and
Right.
I looked you up and I saw that and I read the plot and I was kind of like, wow, this is like right up my alley. Because I'm a
Mm,
huge Philip K. Dick fan, Robert A.
sure.
Heinlein. I love science fiction, horror, and I had to check it out. And I have to say, Future Self was very, very, very cool. Very interesting concept.
Great. Yeah, no, wow, yeah, that came out of wanting to write and direct a feature, which in turn came out of that sort of probably fairly cliched by now thing with actors where you read. I mean, there are a lot of good scripts out there, but the majority of the ones that I was getting were not too great. And there's only so many times you can sort of say, "Well, I should be doing this. Then, I should try. I could do something better than that." And
Right.
before you have to sort of throw your hat in the ring, I was ready to jump right into a feature. I'd written a comedy feature called Laser Wolf, and then uh, my DP, who's a great friend of mine called Terry Siegel, she talked me out of it and said, "Look, you might want to just dip your toe in the water and do a short first." So I wrote Future Self pretty quickly in about a week, um, and yeah, man. I mean, it's like the best time I've had on set for years, and I think just because of the fact that I knew exactly what I wanted to do and I felt completely in control. Um, Even though it was my first time, I knew exactly what I wanted to see and what I wanted from the actors and everything. The set design, everything came together pretty much as I envisioned it, which it's got to be pretty rare. Um, so yeah, man, it's an amazing experience. It was in sort of post where we ran into a few problems, but we got there in the end. Yeah, and I can't wait to. I've actually just finished writing the feature because we picked up like a 3-year distribution deal, and we picked up an award for best short at one of the LA film festivals, and that really encouraged me to write the feature. And once I figured out what that there could be a feature, because I didn't want to just take the short and try and stretch that concept. If it can't be, you shouldn't have to
Right.
force those things. But once I realized what the key was, I got right on the feature, and I've now it's out. It's sort of about to get out there, so to speak. The script, that is. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. But yeah, man, it was a great experience from start to finish, and going on the circuit and getting into a few sort of prestigious film festivals, um, and just being in the audience and experiencing that warmth. And yeah, man, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. So
I know what you mean. Well, not to that extent, but you know, getting to create some of my own films while I've been at Point Park. It's a very satisfying feeling to write, you know, direct, you know, add music, edit, you
yeah,
know, it's to just create something from ground zero and have you be the one who gets to do everything and see how it's executed and all that. It's a very, very rewarding feeling, and I'm really anxious now because it's my senior year. I just started this past week,
hmm
and but I'm more excited to graduate and just get out there and start, you know, making movies.
doing it. Yeah,
It's really just it's the best business in the world in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. I'm a bit of a procrastinator, but I would urge anyone who's who wants to get into it to just do it. Stop thinking about it and just do it. Once I'd completed Future Self, even before really, I mean, just after the after we wrapped the shoot, I was like, why didn't I do this? I could have done that, 10 years before.
Yeah,
Um, quite, you know, quite
right.
simply. But uh, yeah, you just got to do it at the end of the day. Just do it is a pretty good motto.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I guess I have a few more things I could bring up here. Maybe we could just have it go to 25, maybe 30 minutes, and then I think that should be suffice.
Yeah, sure, man. Whatever you want to talk about.
Awesome, awesome. Well, first, you're not the only Godden now that's doing some acting. Is that's correct, right?
Yeah, my sister's carved quite a name for herself on the comedy scene in London. I should say, beyond London, really, because right now she's at the Edinburgh Festival, and she's getting really great reviews and great audiences, and she's she's an up and comer for sure. Yeah, it's an
Very cool.
exciting time to be Marny Godden. That's her name.
Very very cool.
Um, yeah, she was in a comedy trio called the Grandies, and they were sort of fairly successful in their own right. Um, but then they're also away from that jobbing actors, so sometimes you you have to do a real job
Right,
and you
right.
get taken away from it. But I think this going solo has been a bit of a sort of baptism of fire for her, but it's good. She's got more control. Um, she can fire people if she feels like it. There are many benefits to going solo, but yeah, no, it's. I spoke to her earlier on actually, and yeah, I mean, look, she's getting a lot of attention, a lot of gr- um, a lot of great press. And at this stage, I don't know, couldn't be much better, really. But but yeah, if you or any of your listeners are ever in London and she's doing a show, check it out. In the tradition of sort of great British comedy, it's super surreal character stuff.
Awesome. British humor is definitely up there in some of my top favorite genres of humor. I love British, Australian, and New Zealand humor.
Hmm.
I think a lot more than American comedians lately. I just think I love the dryness. I'm a big
Sure.
fan of dry humor, and that's why I like Ben Stiller a lot. Christopher Walken, De Niro. Like even though Walken and De Niro are way more serious actors, and in more recently, especially with Walken, he's been doing more dry humor comedy type films than the serious stuff he was doing when he, first started out. And
Sure.
I think dry humor is the best because, it's like laughing is great, but when it's that dry that it's just like you don't know what to think, I think that just makes it that much funnier.
Sure. Sure. Who's the guy in this picture of yours, by the way?
Uh,
The
where
picture of you and this guy is like your Skype picture or whatever.
my profile picture.
Yeah,
Oh, that's Tom Atkins.
I
Um,
sort of I vaguely recognize him, but
yeah, he I did a interview with him for my radio show last year, and he's actually a Pittsburgh local. He had a huge, extensive career, big in the '80s with the horror industry. Worked a lot with John Carpenter. He was the star of
okay.
The Fog and Halloween 3.
All right, I thought I recognized him. Yeah,
Yeah, Lethal
I'm a
Weapon.
I'm a big. Oh yeah, I recognize him from Lethal Weapon. He was the.
Amanda Hunsacker's father.
There you go. Yeah, he gets shot from the helicopter, right? Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah. I remember. Yeah, I recognize him from. No, I am. I'm coincidentally a big John Carpenter fan too. That's one of the other directors that I really admire. In fact, I think they're showing The Thing in my local movie theater in like a week or two, and I'll definitely be checking that out.
Awesome. Well, that kind of leads me into my next question, which was, what are some of your favorite, movies, horror movies, just movies in general?
Um, well, we'll do movies I mean, the list is constantly
Right, right.
changing and evolving as any movie fan. It's the same thing, you know what I mean? Uh, but we'll start with just movies in general first. Usually somewhere in my top 10, Blade Runner's always there. Um, The Warriors, The Thing, The Godfather Part 2, 12 Angry Men, some early Jackie Chan movies that were made, I think in or around Hong Kong, like Snake in the Eagle's Shadow,
Right.
things like that, Drunken Master,
That's a great one.
uh, and then some of his sort of later stuff in Hong Kong. But let's see who else. What haven't I mentioned? Well, there's a few of the Jaws. I guess is always on the list. Um,
Classic.
Pretty classic, and I'd put that as my number one horror as well. Um,
And that's interesting because, like to you and me, we would definitely consider that probably the number one horror movie of all
and not
time.
everyone would. it in that category.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because what a lot of people don't realize, especially kids of today, is that that movie, the reason, at least I would consider it the like top horror movie of all time, is what followed after that film came out. I mean, we've basically driven, sharks to almost like the endangered species list
Mm,
because of the terror that that film created.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. Like there were times when, I watched that movie a lot when I was a kid, and there were times when I was in a swimming pool and I felt like getting out. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Same here. Same here.
it's ridiculous. And if that music gets into your head,
Right.
you're done. You're out of the pool. You know.
Right. I mean, I remember
We're
my
not even talking about, let alone,
right.
the ocean.
Right, I was gonna say I remember my first visit to the ocean, and like I had seen that movie when I was like very very young. I mean, like my introduction to the R-rated films was at age 6. After at age 3, I had begged my dad to let me watch Total Recall on VHS, and
Yeah.
on my 6th birthday, he was like, "Fine." So I have a very strong stomach for
Hmm.
gore and all that, but
Yeah.
you have to also think, when you see Jaws at age, 5 or 6, and then you go to the ocean for the first time at like 7 or 8. It's like, whoa, I don't know if I want to go in there because I might get eaten by a shark.
Yeah. And it could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
Could be a river,
that's
for Christ's sake.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
um, but yeah, as far as horror movies, I'd say that Jaws and the Thing are probably my favorites, but not necessarily the ones that scared me the most. The ones that scared me the most, to my recollection, were The Exorcist and the original Japanese, the first Ring movie.
Yeah, I would agree with
Ringu,
that.
I think it's
Yeah,
called.
Ringu.
Um, Scared the living daylights out of me. Those two films. I still, you know, Jaws too for sure, but the thing didn't particularly scare me. I just thought it was an absolutely brilliant suspense movie. Um, yeah, so those are my favorites.
I definitely like the Thing. I think the Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing it's a masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece, and it's an overlooked masterpiece too. And he's an overlooked director, I think.
He really
Um,
is. The first interview I actually have up is with Peter Jason, who worked with Carpenter quite a bit on, let's see, They Live was a major one, Prince of Darkness.
yeah,
Um, Basically everything from like Prince of Darkness, They Live on. Peter Jason has worked with Carpenter, and I'm almost like Carpenter is probably my favorite um, horror sci-fi director from the '80s, and
yeah,
I'm just I'm a little down, if you will, because he hasn't done anything lately, and I'm actually I love Kurt Russell so much from you
me too.
know the Carpenter movies, and Escape from New York and Escape from L.A. have been such a part of growing up for me. I mean, my first John Carpenter movie that I saw in theaters was Escape from L.A. And
Yeah, I'm actually I think that film gets a bad rap.
it
Um,
does, and
but I
I
but
think
I
it's
dig it. I like it. It's got I don't think anyone would argue that it has seriously questionable CGI in it.
right, right.
But probably some of the worst that I've seen. But but I didn't care, man, because it was a great ride,
It
and I just
was.
don't know why it gets such a bad rap because it's a fun movie all the way through.
I actually just
And
watched it
there's a
2 nights
Campbell
ago. Yeah,
cameo in it. What would
right.
you
Bruce
want?
Campbell. You had Peter Fonda,
Yeah,
um, Pam Grier. You know,
yeah.
Steve
Steve is
Steve
steamy.
Buscemi, right? And that film, being the first John Carpenter film I saw in theaters, and I just watched it like 2 nights ago, and it still holds up, at least to me to this day, as a
Oh, it
great.
totally does. And the funny thing is, I think I'm not sure what the gap is between those two movies. Something like 15 or 16 years.
Yeah, yeah,
And he looks like Kurt Russell looks like he's aged a day
right,
between the two movies. Like it's the next day. You know what I mean?
right.
Um,
I actually love those films so much that I'm currently developing a third installment
you
that
may as well, man.
exactly. And the way I'm doing it is it's going to take place about 20-25 years after LA, and it's going to be like an aftermath of all that. And it's perfect because Kurt Russell, the age he's at now, is perfect for where I'm gonna have it take place and everything. So with sequels these days, who knows?
Well, which city is it? Is
I'm
it going to
actually
be Escape from New York again? Is that the name of it?
I'm actually thinking of just titling it like Snake Plissken.
Oh, not
And
bad. Yeah, cool.
yeah, and I kind of want to have it go back to New York and LA and kind of like all over the US. And but it kind of just want to have I want it to go into like Snake's past and kind of like what made him the anti-hero he is today that we know. And I kind of want to have him like start out living in like Alaska, like secluded and
Yeah.
everything, by himself, living in the wilderness and all that. And I don't want to give away too much more,
No, 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 no,
but
no.
yeah,
You got my ticket money. I'm in. Yeah.
awesome, awesome.
Anything Snake Plissken, I'm in.
Yes, it's one of the most awesome anti-hero movie characters ever created,
Yeah.
and you really got to give it to Kurt Russell and Deborah Hill for that. They really knew what they were doing and
Mm.
have just created some of the most awesome sci-fi horror movies that we know to this day. And unfortunately, the mainstream horror industry is not what it was in the 80s and even in the 90s. But I like to think that kind of paves the way for people like me and up and coming filmmakers to kind of take what they grew up with the 80s and 90s and all that, and just kind of take that and force it into this era and just make it something new.
Yeah. I was just wondering as you were saying that, what if I'd seen a decent horror, and if so, I mean recently, and if so, what would it have been? And I'd argue that you could say that Whiplash might be considered a horror. It depends how you look at it,
Yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
it's got a lot of those elements. I think you could put it on the horror shelf, but and also arguably The Guest, um,
Yeah,
perhaps more of a thriller, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't made up my mind about that. They actually used I I swear they used that classic John Carpenter font
yeah,
at the beginning when the titles come up, and I was like, all right, I already know I'm gonna like this film, you
right,
know,
right.
and it was great. But it's probably the closest thing to a horror that I've seen recently that I really enjoyed.
For me, the last really, really, really good horror movie that I saw that actually, ironically enough, had a lot of remnants of Lovecraft in it was the cabin in the woods.
Yeah, I'm not an enormous fan. Uh, uh, um, and I wish I could tell you why, because I've only seen it once, and it was when it first came out. And it
Mm-hmm.
was, to be fair, it was at the point when I saw it was there was a lot of buzz around it, and everyone was saying how great it was, and I think I was maybe expecting too much. Um, it's that sort of self-referential stuff.
Right.
I just didn't. It didn't do it for me. But it was Joss Whedon, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Cabin in the Woods aside, I think he's incredibly talented, insanely uh, talented guy. Just that particular film just didn't grab me the same way it did everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was that's just the best film I think horror wise of the 2010s so far.
Sure.
But for me, as far as like if you want to say the 2000s into the 2010s and where we're at, right now, I think the best horror movies to come out of the 2000s and counting into the 2010s would definitely have to be the Jeepers Creepers movies.
Yeah, I'm not. I know what they are. I think I've seen bits of them, but never one all the way through.
I
Um,
highly recommend it. It's basically the last monster movie we've had.
right, right. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, there's two of them so far. It's actually I think Victor Salva, I think is the guy who wrote and directed them.
Mm,
Um, really, really just great horror, straight
instinct.
horror instincts, horror movies. He also did, I believe he wrote the movie Powder with Patrick Flannery from the
Yeah, I know that.
'90s. Yeah, he's done some really interesting stuff, but Jeepers Creepers is probably his closest to straight horror.
Mhm.
And like the creeper's kind of like a demon. We don't know exactly what it is. It's kind of
Mm,
like we don't know what Pennywise the clown is.
right,
Is
right.
it a demon? Is it an alien? We can assume that the creeper is probably most likely a demon, but it's never like implied. And the thing I like about it the most is that they basically tell you outright they have no idea of how to actually kill it. And that's just a great concept to me. Like, where you have Jason and you have Freddy and you have Michael Myers and Leatherface, those guys, they're larger than life and they can be killed, but with like Freddy and Jason and Myers, it's like it's like they can be killed and they get killed at the end, but they always come back for the sequel. In the Jeepers Creepers movies, it's just you can never actually kill the creeper.
Right, right, right. Spe Speaking of which, I have to admit, hold on one second.
Yeah.
My screen just went dead. I'm just sorry. Um, I have to admit that when I was a kid, the first Nightmare on Elm Street gave me nightmares. Luckily, I didn't live on Elm Street, but I did. I was pretty scared of Freddy in the beginning. The first three, I thought. I mean, especially one and three, Dream Warriors.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
I think those were the where the series peaked, and he was still scary sometimes.
Right.
The first one. I mean, if they'd have just left it at that, he'd be. I wonder. I wonder. Maybe you know, maybe even more iconic than he is now. I'm not sure.
Right.
Because he kind of became a bit cartoonish, obviously, but
He did,
uh,
and that's where I kind of like knew Nightmare a lot.
yeah, it was a nice concept, a way of sort of. It was kind of the pre sort of cursor to Scream, wasn't it? It was that
Yeah,
same
yeah,
sort of idea. But yeah, I thought in the beginning he was genuinely really scary, and I totally bought into it. It was just such a ridiculous concept, and yet um, they nailed it. They convinced me.
right, right.
And
I
even now, when I see that first kill in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the girl sort of flying through the air in the bedroom and then up
right.
onto the ceiling stuff. I mean, it's fucking scary.
It is. It's. I think that the first Nightmare absolutely still holds up to this day. I think the first. I think actually I think part one and part two of the Friday the 13th movies still hold up to this day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Part two being my favorite. I mean,
Which one is the one where he jumps out of the lake at the end?
that's where he's like still the kid.
Yeah,
That's the first one.
that's the
Um,
end of
yes, the
one.
ending to the very first Friday the 13th
Yeah, I
because
mean, it's worth watching that whole movie just for
right,
that.
right, and that was actually Tom Savini's idea. Who did the
Right.
makeup effects for the film?
Sure.
He actually because the way they were going to end it was she just went out on the lake and she woke up the next morning and everything was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And Savini, who is a Pittsburgh local and master at makeup effects, doing all the George Romero zombie movies.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I remember him in From Dusk Till Dawn.
yeah, Sex Machine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he it was actually his idea, and he said we should totally just make Jason come out of the water at the end, and that's what ended up happening. And if it wasn't for Savini's suggestion to do that, we would never have had all the Friday the 13th sequels that have
Yeah.
since followed.
No, exactly. And let's face it, it's the most iconic moment from the series.
Right, right. But I would definitely have to say part two is probably my favorite. Only because, and what most people don't realize is Jason didn't get the mask until the third one, and
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, because
yeah,
I watched them all in sequence, and when I haven't seen them for years, but I do remember that detail. And the one I've seen the most times was, I think, four, which at the time was called the final chapter, which
right, right,
didn't wind up being the final chapter at all. More like middle chapter.
right.
Um, but it had like Crispin Glover on it, and I was a big fan of his, and you know
George McFly.
exactly. He was in it, and Corey Feldman was in it.
Right, right.
It was the most high profile one, I guess, in a way.
And that was also the one that Savini returned to do the effects for.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there.
They're just a great series. I mean, I would say Freddy is probably my top favorite out of the three
The
major
slash
ones.
movies.
Yeah. But I mean, in all honesty, I'd have to probably split Freddy and Leatherface into my top, two favorite iconic, horror movie characters from like the dawn of slasher into the 80s and what it became. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is just a masterpiece. I mean, you have Dennis Hopper,
Yeah.
getting revenge on the family for what they did to his niece and nephew in the first one, and just an iconic um, chainsaw battle between Hopper and Leatherface at the end, and also Bill Mosley as Chop Top, which is also, I think, to this still holds up to this day as one of the most iconic and awesome horror movie characters. And
Right.
that's also one of the things I loved about the '80s horror movie series, because you just had some of the most awesome horror movie characters created, and you don't really even have that these days with what's coming out. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan at all of the Paranormal Activity or
Right.
what are some of the other ones, the POV horror films.
There's a. I quite liked the first installment of Insidious.
Insidious was great, I will
That
say
was
that.
that was pretty good. And I quite liked. I thought there were a couple of moments in The Conjuring. I mean, there were some actors that I liked in that too, so that
Right.
helped. And I hear there's this one with Ethan Hawke that has a sort of iconic horror character in it, but
Sinister.
I haven't seen, right, and I haven't seen that yet, so I'm not going to obviously I can't comment on that. But
I have
I've,
seen Sinister. I haven't seen
sure.
the second one. I hear the second one
Is it out yet? The
is
second one?
yeah. It's actually should be out in theaters right now.
Oh, okay.
Um, the first Sinister to me was definitely a great horror movie,
Mhm.
but it's not of the stature of like the '80s stuff
The
where
greats.
I can be like, okay, I'm gonna go out and buy that because I can watch it time and time again. Like
Yeah, yeah,
once I saw the ending and I saw what it was about, it was like this was definitely good and original, but it's not to me to actually go out and own it.
sure,
Um,
sure, sure.
the second one though, it looked a lot darker and more into who like this demon character is, who's the antagonist of the film.
Hmm.
So I'll definitely check it out. I'm excited to see it. So
Yeah, and I'll take a look at the first one whenever. Yeah, I remember thinking the one another one that just came to mind was The Orphanage. That was a pretty scary film.
yeah,
I
yeah, that
haven't
was
seen
a
it.
good one.
Spanish, I think.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
quite. Um,
I honestly think Guillermo del Toro is probably one of the best horror movie filmmakers out there right now. I'm really excited to check out Crimson Peak.
yeah, yeah, looks good. I'm a big fan of. I mean, yeah, obviously Pan's Labyrinth is I think a masterpiece.
The Devil's Backbone,
Devil's Backbone was great. Uh, um,
Mimic.
yeah, I think in sort of recent years, the Japanese and the Spanish have really picked up the horror torch and been and
Yeah,
have been making the most original um, movies that we've seen. And obviously, that's the case when in Hollywood they've remade practically all of those Korean
right.
and Japanese horror movies. Um, the original version of The Eye was pretty cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I like
Definitely.
that. I didn't see the remake, and Dark Water had its moments, the original version, but yeah, Ring was the one
Yeah,
for sure.
that one probably freaked me out the most out of you know all of the other Japanese and Asian horror movie
Yeah,
stuff they've done. I mean, it's just they know what they're doing. They do. I
yeah.
mean, but
There's something about that roll of tape that scares the bejesus out of me. It's this sort of something to do with it being analog.
right.
If it was like a if the Ring had been about some kind of know YouTube clip that if you watch it,
Right.
you have
Right.
to get someone else to watch it because you to lift this sort of curse. It wouldn't. have had the same impact. It's something that VHS tape, it's something tangible.
Right.
Um, it's a thing. It's you can pick it up and put it down. You know, that's that's what really made it scary. I don't know how to explain it, but anyway.
All great stuff. You know, I mean, horror is just it's horror. It's to me it's one of the best and most fantastic genres out there because
Well, it's the universal language. You know, not every genre translates from country to country. Like obviously we've seen with comedy that the Chinese have they have a completely different idea of what's funny
right.
to what we in the Western world would see as funny. And that goes for, you know, the rest of the world too. But fear is the universal language, and therefore horror is the universal genre, and that's why it's a lot easier to get those movies financed, is because they've got a better chance um, on a sort of in the world market than
Exactly.
than probably any other genre, and they're also, you know, if you got a good idea, there's no reason why it should be expensive.
Right.
Blood's cheap.
Right. And I think the thing that definitely got me that really was a profound quote that Lovecraft actually said was something like, man's oldest fear is the fear of the unknown. And to me, that is the epitome of what horror is. And it
Yeah.
relates to everything, whether you want to say it's politics, anti Semitism, racism, you know, it all goes down to the fear of the unknown. And to me, that quote, that concept, is the epitome of kind of like the human race and how we work and everything. And I think that's just one more reason um, horror is the universal language.
Yeah, absolutely. We all make decisions based on fear, and we're all scared of the unknown. And the unknown is something as simple as, you know, me walking out the front door and down the street. No one knows what's coming next, and
Right.
um, that's that's just it. It's such a simple concept, and true of all of us. So we can, you know, all relate.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, we are coming up at just about 55 minutes here. And I kind of have another interview coming up in a little bit.
Sure.
So I think we're gonna have to stop here for now. But I'd like to just say thank you once again, Ezra, for agreeing to do the fishbowl. It has been great having you on. Great conversation, and if you ever have anything else coming up or going on, please, you know, let me know, and I'd be happy to do another interview and talk some more.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, uh, the feature version of Future Self aside, my other um, sort of pet project is the moment at the moment is a horror feature that I intend on directing, and maybe the next time if we speak again, we'll be discussing that. I'm keeping everything under my hat for
Right,
now,
right.
but that's certainly something. Um, yeah, something to talk about in the future for sure. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. Well, Ezra, it's been great having you on.
yeah,
Thanks
pleasure,
again
man.
for doing the show, and
From one Ezra to another.
absolutely. And if you could spread the word of the fishbowl, that'd be great.
Sure thing, man. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Absolutely.
See ya.
Bye.